I think in terms of injury updates, I think Tom Ince has done some light training this week, which obviously we hoped he would. I think he's still going to be touch and go whether we think he's able to go straight into the game, just because of the nature of his operation. But we'll assess that probably over the next sort of 24 hours. Sam Klukas has come through the game, checker trade game, really well. So again, I think he's another step closer to being able to effectively start the game, whether we choose to do that or not. I think everyone else is back fit. I'm just trying to think of, without insulting anyone, that's on. Mamju's fit, yeah, Mam's fit. So yeah, I think everybody's fit and ready to go. In fact, it's probably probably the most players we've had training towards the back end of the week. I think the international break's actually been quite a decent one because Bennett didn't travel. James McLean wasn't available for the second game, so came back a bit earlier. I think Sido travelled back early. So I think we've only really had the two Welsh lads, Kuko and Peter. And Peter's always the one that's a difficult one because he tends to fly back late on the Thursday night. And lands the first time we see him is Friday morning, so I think it's always a challenge. Thankfully we haven't got another international break for quite some time.
You talk about it being a better international break, but it must disrupt your flow of training. How do you cope? Do you bring more youngsters in to train with the players? Or?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, we spoke about it before. I think the reality is, most championship sides would have 2 or 3 maximum players away, so they can do as much or as little as work as they want. I mean, most clubs will still use it to give the players a little bit of a breather, but they'll get some good work in. The reality for us is that, unfortunately we have 9 or 10 away, so it actually is quite a disruptive period of time, but this one's probably been the least disruptive out of all of them. And that's exactly what you do. You bring up the under 23 players, the ones that have done so well, the ones that have really been pushing for pushing for involvement in the first team. And I think their performances have probably warranted some involvement. I think Tom's obviously your obvious one that's come in and done really well. I think Lass has been training with us, and certainly in the under 23s his performances have really looked back to where they were towards the end of last season. I think Tyrese always gives you that issue that he scores goals, and if we continue to not score goals, then of course there has to be a point where we have to look at him and give him an opportunity. It's sometimes difficult when you've got quite a big squad to do that, because it means telling 2 or 3 of the first team players that then you no longer really see them as the option. But they've trained with us. We've had sort of 4, 5, 6 under 23 players training with us, and that's what you try to do. You use it as an opportunity for them to show you what they're about.
So moving forward, you've got two home games this week. You've got through a sticky period of tough away fixtures. You obviously looking forward to maximise hopefully 6 points this week. But everybody's talking about we don't score enough goals. How are you going to remedy that? It's not that easy, is it?
No. I think it's interesting if you look at the season so far. I mean, we were I wouldn't say free scoring, but we were creating lots of opportunities and scoring goals early season. But it's no good scoring 2 goals if you're going to concede 3. It's no good scoring 3 if you're going to concede 4. So the reality is, we've I wouldn't say sorted, but we've improved part of our game, which is the defensive side of it. We've improved that a lot, I think, over that period. I think it's clear to see. And I don't necessarily think that's the reason why we've not created as many chances, because I still believe we've not created as many obvious chances, but we've still got into some great areas, and I just don't think we've been clinical enough or maybe took enough risks in the final third. And that's something that we've looked at this week with the players, something we spoke to the players about. Maybe part of a natural evolution is that you sort out a little bit more defensive side of it, and when you get to the point where you're quite happy with all of those things, maybe the last little bit is that bit of freedom, and maybe you need the solidity to give you the chance and afford you the chance to play with freedom. So but I certainly think that's something we've looked at. I think that like the defenders had to do early season, the forwards on the whole and the midfielders now have to take, we all have to take responsibility, but we've got to be more dangerous, and we've got to create more chances, and we've got to score more goals, and certainly we have the players to do that, but we've got to show it.
Bruno Martins this week has spoken to the press and made some observations about scoring goals. You only need to score 1 if you keep a clean sheet, that's obvious. But he's also talked about the way the fans are seemingly more positive away from home. Do you have any message to the fans for these 2 home games?
I think firstly, before I do, I think I also read some of Bruno's comments about the start of the season, and I think whilst you're sort of trying to portray some of the things that you got to deal with early season, I think he was quite succinct in what he said and very open in what he said, and I think a lot of the lads would have felt the same. But when you've been a Premier League club for 10 years, but suddenly it was actually hard for him to understand why he was playing the Championship, and I think that's what we had for the first 5 or 6 games. We had a lot of good players, but something just wasn't clicking, and part of that was mentality, part of that was acceptance of the situation. But now we have, certainly we've seen some improvement. I think I think with the fans, I mean, look, away from home we've been brilliant. I think the fans have got behind us, even in the games where, if I look back to the Blackburn game where we were 3 goals down, and they quite rightly could have continued to be disgruntled. We score a goal, they get right behind us, and they see a tremendous attempt at a comeback. And they were very good in the other games as well, and I think they saw against Birmingham that we didn't play badly, probably didn't deserve to lose the game, and against Middlesbrough we tried to win the game, So, but what we've got to try and do is we've got to try and back up their support and back up their patience with good home performance, and I think we've played well at home without scoring the goals we perhaps should have done, but now we've got to do that. We have to play with the same control, we have to play and dominate the game if we can, but against a decent uplifted QPR side as well that are coached by a very experienced manager in Steve. But we've got to try and put on a good performance, because the fans, it's like anything, you look up and down the country now. If a home team goes 1 goal down, most home teams will classically, they'll have a little bit of disappointment. I think that's just the nature of the business, So we've got to turn that around by improving our home form. It's as simple as that, because our away form actually is up there with the best in the league, really, So, but what we've got to do is we've got to make the Bet365 Stadium a bit of a fortress once more.
Peter Coates also mentioned that, as you said about doing marketing, it was difficult for the players to get over that, and now we've got people in November talking about the transfer window. It must be difficult for you to keep all the players away from what in this length of time is nothing more than press speculation. How do you find that, given that the transfer window is a fair way away?
I think the reality of it, you get a situation where for a couple of weeks after the last window shuts, you get 1 or 2 players maybe disappointed that moves didn't materialise, and it settles down. You get a period where it doesn't get mentioned, and then again I think you start to get towards now where the external media ramp it up, because of course there's so many great stories out there, whether they're all true or not, or is not really my concern. But the reality is that's what it does. It hypes up some of the things that could happen. So I think the players are always aware of it. They don't speak too much about it, if I'm being honest. What you might get is around this time 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 getting a little bit edgy, because maybe they feel like they need to play more regular football. So what you hope happens is you hope that players put performances in, because they know that we need to do our jobs. We need to do as a manager, you're always judged on results. I'm aware of that. I'm happy with that. I'm comfortable with that. But as players, you're also judged on your performance. And if you don't perform, then the reality is there's always players out there that managers will look at to try and strengthen your teams. And there's always players that will know they need to play more regular football. So never an ideal time for a manager, but it's an interesting time nonetheless. And it's not too hard to maintain a little bit of balance in the camp, because I think the players talk about it, but I don't think it affects them too much, if I'm being honest.
And the last one from me, you're obviously aware that there's a local derby going to take place at the beginning of December. I'm expecting the amount of people trying to get into that team for that game will be quite intense now.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because the Checkatrade Trophy, of course, you can only play 2 senior players. So it's a difficult one, because I think if saying that, the 23s have performed admirably, but there might be a bit more external pressure to play a slightly more senior side because of the importance of the fixture. But what I would say is it's a fixture that You know, due to both clubs' sort of recent history, but has not happened often enough. Of course, with Stoke being in the Premier League for so long. But I remember a time, and I think I was at Derby at the time, where, or it might even have been Cambridge, where both teams were in the Championship. Both teams were, you know, some classic encounters, and I expect it to be a really good game with a lot of edge. You know, certainly told Kev that, you know, whilst winning is not the most important thing for an under-23 game, if you're playing Port Vale, unfortunately, it becomes the most important thing. So I hope it captures a fan's imagination. I hope it's one that's really well supported, and I think the under-23s deserve that support, because they've been really good this season, and you know, they've done the club proud in what they've achieved so far. But they want to try and get further, and I'm sure Port Vale want to win the game also.